So good morning. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and I welcome you to the Sunday service for the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast. And if there's anybody watching that hasn't been to a Center for Spiritual Living, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you, no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles, whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith. You're welcome here. So to begin our service this morning, my wife Becky, who's a practitioner emeritus, is going to open us with a prayer, and then I will do a reading and begin the message.
So I just invite each person to turn within. And as we turn within, we open our hearts, we open up our minds, and just know that from this place of great gratitude and peace, that we recognize this wonderful divine power. It is all in all knowing, all powerful, and everywhere present. Everywhere present. And I'm knowing my oneness in this divine presence and power, that it is who and what I am, always expressing, allowing it to express within myself, touching the hearts of other people. And I'm knowing this for each person here, right now. And so in this realization, I'm knowing that as this morning unfolds, it's unfolding in divine perfection. It's never an accident that each person is here by divine accordance, knowing that we are called to be here in this moment. How joyous is that? How special is that? Knowing that we are called to be here, to open up our hearts and our awareness, to deepen our consciousness in this morning's message. Yes, this morning's message that is so divinely expressed by Reverend Dr. Ron, that he too is being called in spirit to deliver this, for us to hear this, to really hear this, and to know it in our soul. And so I just give thanks. I give thanks for each person here this morning and who will be watching this later on. I release this and just know that it is done. And so it is.
And so it is. So hello again. And this morning, I want to speak on immortality. It's something, that our concept of immortality. I haven't spoken on it in a while, and I like to do it every once in a while. And I want to begin with something that I wrote. So I'm going to do a reading, but I wanted to just give you a little background. I wrote this when I was taking a class from Becky on art as healing. And one of the classes was about immortality, and Becky did a meditation. And when I came out of the meditation, I wrote this. And there's one part, just so it makes sense to you, when Becky meditates and asks for guidance, very often what comes to her is, she refers to it as her little Chinese man. This little man comes to her with his wisdom. And so you'll see why I just told you that. So here's the reading. As the meditation began, I felt myself going very deep. I experienced a feeling of complete peace. My guide and I floated along in silence. I was awed by the beauty of what I was seeing. Colors that were more vibrant than anything I had ever seen, and the sounds were beyond any melodies that had ever been written. While I had left my body behind, somehow I retained the ability to see and communicate through what I guess we would call mental telepathy. Soon we came to a curtain. I simply slipped through while my guide veered off and let me know he would wait for me. I wasn't prepared for what came next. There were hundreds of people from my life all waiting for me. Old friends I hadn't seen from kindergarten, high school friends, college buddies, neighbors, teachers, girls I dated, work friends, former bosses and subordinates, people who had hurt me and people I had hurt. There they were. The love and kindness they exuded were almost palpable. I went and floated before each one. I have never felt so embraced by love. To some, I said only hello. Others I said more to, and still others I asked questions. No one responded. They just looked at me with love. I slowly came to realize that in this realm, words were hardly necessary because love spoke louder than anything I could say. After what seemed like an instant, I sensed I was ready to depart and that my guide was waiting. As I slipped back through the curtain, I was surprised to see a different guide waiting for me. I looked at him and I said, I know you. You were the little Chinese man. You're Becky's guide. Why are you here? He just smiled and beckoned for me to sit on a bench that was nearby. Today's lesson was to teach you to relax and stop worrying so much, he said. All of the people that were here today were part of the thread of your life. Some of them had big roles, some not so big, but they all touched you in some way and you touched them. It didn't matter if you hurt them or they hurt you or you liked one another or despised one another. In the end, all of that disappeared and what was left was love. I'm sure you could see that by the way everyone was glad to see you and embraced you. When you go back, lighten up. Try to remember that everything you experience is a piece of a greater puzzle. Some you will understand and some you won't. But in the end, it's all good. As if he could sense what I was thinking, he said, you'll notice none of your family was here today. You know they all love you. Today was about showing you we're all family, and it's not our parentage that decides our humanity and our connection to one source. As I was about to head back to my body, my new guide said, stop. Don't you want to know why I'm here? I'm part of the lesson. You see, if we're all one in the eyes of God, then I'm not only Becky's guide, but I'm yours too. In the oneness of the universe, there is no mine and yours. There's only ours. With that, I returned to my body and awoke feeling refreshed and renewed. So I want to start by talking about what Ernest Holmes, the founder for the Center for Spiritual Living, thought about immortality. And what he said immortality means that we shall persist after the physical experience, after the experience of physical death. He said we're going to retain a full memory of who we are and we'll be able to recognize other people. And let me read a quote. He said, man then, if he has immortality worthy of the name, must continue as he is now beyond the grave. Death cannot rob him of anything if he be immortal. And he went on and he said, you know, if we believe that there are many planes of existence, perhaps death means we just move from one plane to another. And then he said, you know, when we came into this life here, there were people waiting to greet us who loved us and who took care of us until we were able to care for ourselves. And he said, so if we can judge the future by our past experience, can't we believe that when we enter the next life, there'll be people who we knew and who loved us that are with us until we become accustomed to our new way of living. Eric Butterworth, the late Unity minister, wrote about immortality also. And he said, you know, in our life, change is constant. And in every change, there's death and there's rebirth. And that's why St. Paul said, I die daily. And Butterworth said, every day the sun sets, and that marks the end of a day. And day turns into night, and night turns into day again. And he said, and then when somebody leaves a room, it said, she's leaving the room. Or somebody else might be saying, she's entering the room. And both are true. So I want to read something to you. It's called I Am Standing Upon the Seashore, and it's by Henry Van Dyke. And he makes the point, you'll see, that Butterworth is making, that somebody is leaving and somebody is coming. I'm standing upon the seashore, a ship at my side, spreads her white sails to the moving breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She's an object of beauty and strength. I stand and watch her until at length she hangs like a speck of white clouds just where the sea and sky come to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, there, she is gone. Gone where? Gone from my sight, that is all. She is just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side. And she is just as able to bear her load of freight to her destined port. Her diminished size is in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone says, there, she is gone, there are other eyes watching her coming and other voices ready to take up the glad shout. Here she comes. And that is dying. So Wayne Muller wrote a book titled, How Then Shall We Live? And the basis of the book is 4 questions that he asks. And here's the questions. Who am I? Who do I love? How shall I live, knowing I will die? And what is my gift to the family of the earth? And he writes in the book that people who know they will die live very carefully. And he said, not fearfully, carefully as full of care. And he said, every word, every act, every relationship holds the possibility of giving birth to something that's filled with great care. And he said, our lives are made up of these moments that can be filled with great care. Simple words and simple actions that make a day, and our days become our lives. And he said, just as Rumi said, let the beauty we love be what we do. And I was reading a book this week that's written by Sogyal Rinpoche called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And in the book, he writes, when he came to the US from Tibet, he was shocked at the difference there is in our attitudes about death from what he met in the Eastern world. And he said, here in the West, people deny death. And he said, and they're terrified of it. And he goes on and he said, you know, if people believe in life after death, their entire outlook changes because they have a sense of personal responsibility and morality. And he said, the Buddha taught we can use our life to prepare for death. We can begin to find meaning in our lives. And he said, in Buddhism, life and death are seen as one whole. Death is the beginning of another story, another chapter in our life. So I want to share with you a couple of stories of people that had a very, very positive outlook. And one of them I read about a lady named Mary, who was 90 years old. And Mary had stomach cancer. But her family didn't tell her the diagnosis. They wanted to protect her. And at some point, when the end was imminent, they decided they needed to tell her, and they asked a hospice nurse to tell her. And so she went in and she said to Mary that the end was near. And she said when she told her, Mary's eyes lit up and they got really wide. And she said, "Oh, that's great. I'm going to be going to meet the folks." What a positive outlook. And the second story is about a man who's 85 years old, and he too has cancer, and he needs to decide whether he's going to have an operation to hopefully cure him or not. And he's debating this, speaking to a counselor. And at some point, he says to the counselor in one of their meetings that he's decided to have the operation. And the counselor says to him, "So what made you decide to do that?" And he said, "I had a dream. Let me tell you about my dream." The dream he was sitting in his chair, and at some point, his wife comes and sits next to him. And she looks like she did earlier in their relationship. She was younger. And he said, but what struck him was the love that was in her eyes when she looked at him, how much she loved him. And after a while, his best friend comes, and his best friend looks at him with loving eyes. And then his brother comes and looks at him with very loving eyes. And one by one, other people whose lives he touched come. Family, friends, neighbors, his grandchildren, teachers he had, students he had. By the end of the dream, he said there were more than 60 people crowded all around. And what he realized was his life had value. And when he realized how many lives he touched and how much value his life had, the fear left him, and he decided to go ahead and have the operation. So I've mentioned, I think we talked about this last week, that Becky and I are taking a class from the Institute of Noetic Sciences on conscious aging. And one of the people whose material that we read is somebody named Ron Peavy. And he wrote a book called Conscious Living, Conscious Aging. And in the book, he said the work that prepares us to be at peace at the end of our life is the same work that prepares us to consciously age. And that work is healing our past. And he said that hospice researchers have found that there are 4 pieces of unfinished business that are important for people that are seeking peace at the end of their life. And here's what the 4 pieces are. First one is asking forgiveness from those we might have offended. The second one is forgiving those we need to forgive. The third one is expressing gratitude to those who have made a difference in our life. And the fourth one is saying goodbye. So I want to read a piece to you that's titled Living Wide Open. And it starts, I will not die an unlived life. And it's by Dorna Markova. And she wrote this piece that I'm going to read to you on the night her dad died. She said his heart was hollow and vacant of any dreams because he didn't believe he mattered. And she wrote that these words are the footprint of her life. They've led her through cancer, they've led her through chaos, and they remind her of who she is and why she's here. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhibit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on in fruit. So I mentioned before, I haven't really done a message on immortality in several years. And I want to do something that I did the last time because I think it's so powerful and it bears worth doing. So it's a meditation I want to read to you from the book, Making Peace with Your Past by Harold Bloomfield. So I'd like you, if you would, if you want to participate, put your feet on the floor, close your eyes, and just be with me as we do this. Right now, it's the end of your life. You've aged like fine wine and lived long and well. You lay on your deathbed without any pain or great discomfort, knowing that your time to leave your body is at hand. Around you are your dearest loved ones. You can feel the depth and purity of their love. They tell you how proud they are of you and the life you've lived. And you search their eyes and your heart, and no words that have been said, no feelings that have been expressed. There's no unfinished business that needs to be completed. You're at peace with each of them. Now alone, you hear their voices in the next room. They're laughing as they recall the good times with you. Their stories are filled with admiration, respect, and appreciation. They praise your courage, your commitment to seeing yourself with honesty and candor. They admire you for making peace with your past. You have given voice to the yearning of your soul, and you have consciously explored the cosmos within. Your quintessential self is at peace. If there is a voice of God, it speaks. One such as you has never passed this way before and never will again. You are my beloved, with whom I am deeply pleased. So now visualize your family and your closest friends as they come to see you one by one for the last time. What do they say about the role you have played in their lives. How did they praise you? What do you fondly remember? Imagine your funeral. How are you eulogized? What is said about the way you lived? What lessons and inspiration did the speakers derive from your example? When you're finished, ask yourself this question. What if the end were to come today? Would you be able to go in peace? What would you regret not having made time for? What would you wish you said to those who were closest to you? How different would your deathbed scene and funeral be as compared to the ideal scenarios you just visualized? Would anyone feel sorry for you? Would people say, it's a shame you never lived up to your true potential? Would anyone be glad you're gone? So when you come out now and open your eyes, I'm just going to leave you with the words, the last words that Steve Jobs said before he made his transition. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. God bless you and have a wonderful week.